Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Top 10 Songs. Today, as we're following the coronavirus lockdowns, we're kind of doing these things remotely. So I've got a special guest host here with me today, someone who hasn't been on the show in about a year. We're actually going to do this together in person in April, but that's not looking like it's going to happen. So welcome back to the show, Mr. Jack Toledano, old friend of mine. We're going to talk about our 10 favorite songs from Accept. Jack, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Pete. Uh, Again, thank you very much for inviting me to do this under these circumstances. This couldn't be helped.
Yeah.
I'm climbing the walls at my house right now, and I hear that pretty soon they're not going to allow us to go to the park. So this couldn't have come at a better time.
Yeah, and I think most of our viewers have been really appreciating this channel pumping out so much content because, I mean, everybody's in the same ballpark, right? It's like everybody's sitting at home, everybody has extra time on their hands, and I think that music is a way to help everybody kind of escape all that's going on in the world. So why not talk about some bands we love, the albums we love, the songs we love? And Jack and I actually talked quite a while ago about doing this Accept episode, and like I said, we were going to get together for a beer festival in April, and we were going to record it then because he lives on Long Island. I'm in upstate New York, so we don't see each other all the time. But obviously that festival is not happening. So we said, you know what, let's do it on Skype, make it happen. And, so here we are. So Accept, a great classic metal band from Germany that I'm not going to speak for Jack here, but I've been listening to them since the Restless and Wild album came out, and I was forever a fan. I've seen them live numerous times. They've got a lot of great albums, but more importantly, a lot of great songs. And I don't know about you, Jack. And Jack and I have not discussed our lists, all right? I generally don't do that with my guest hosts. So I have no idea what he's got on his, nor does he on mine. But I will say a lot of fantastic songs. And this was not an easy list to put together.
No, it was not.
Not at all. So, like I said, some of those early albums are killer, especially like the, Restless and Wild, Balls to the Wall, Metal Heart, but man, they've got some killer, more recent albums since they've kind of made the big comeback with Rob Tornillo on vocals. So, and I'm sure Jack would agree because we had a brief conversation the other day about how neither one of us were going to ignore the new stuff. So,
yeah.
So all I'll say for all of you folks out there watching who are probably longtime Accept fans, but maybe stopped listening to new stuff after like 86 or 87, you really need to check out their last 4 studio albums. You really need to. We'll talk about more of that as we go on through the video. I'm sure Jack is shaking his head, so I know he agrees.
So,
cool.
Yeah.
So Jackson will lead us off. So how we work these is we're going to each start at number 10. We're going to ping pong each other, and we'll get to our number ones. And like I said, we don't know each other's lists, so we'll see how much overlap we have. My guess is there might be a couple songs here and there, but I'm anxious to see. So Jack, kick us off with your number 10.
Sure. Okay. Let me just preface this by saying that, yes, I agonized over the choices too. And there are 2 great lead singers in Accept, Udo Dirkschneider and Mark Tornillo. And I'm asking myself, do I go 50-50? Do I lean one way or the other, or do I just throw caution to the wind and just pick my favorite songs?
Well, that's the way to do it, right? Yeah. And I apologize. I called Mark Rob before. It's Mark Tornillo, not Rob.
I can say that I could have easily, and Pete was alluding to the more recent albums, and some time ago, Pete, you had this thing on Facebook where you asked all your friends what would be your top 10 albums that you would bring on a deserted island with you, and Blood of the Nations would definitely be one of those. That would be on the top of my list, and I could have easily picked maybe 7 or 8 out of 10 from that album alone.
Yeah, and I agree. All 4 of their releases since their comeback with Mark on vocals have been stellar, but that Blood of the Nations album is killer. And I re-listened to it yesterday, and I can't believe the massiveness of the production of that album. Right? It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when Andy Sneap joined Judas Priest, he highly recommended by Glenn Tipton. he had instant credibility with me just for that album alone, Blood of the Nations. And
Yep.
then look what he did with Firepower for Priest.
Yep. He's a great producer. Yeah, he is. And he's made Accept sound larger than life. So anyway, we digress. We could talk about this all day. What do you got for number 10, Jack?
It's funny you mentioned Restless and Wild. There is a song off of Restless and Wild, which is my number 10. It's Princess of the Dawn.
Great song.
Yeah.
Great song.
I've seen Accept a few times. I know you saw them with me once, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
You saw them with Creator.
Yep.
And Princess of the Dawn always seems to be a concert favorite. You know, it's got a great driving beat. You know, the people pumping their fists with. It's just, you know, very deliberate beat, and you know, and I love that at the end where he goes da 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 da. Yeah, I don't do it as well as they do, but
that's all right. Yeah, it's a great tune, a great album. I think, you know, before I put my list together, I was like, well, God, I could fill up my entire top 10 with songs from Restless and Wild, Balls to the Wall, and Blood of the Nations. But that's a great one, and it's one of the songs that I also had considered. I'm going to go for my number 10. I'm going to go to Beat the Bastards from Blood of the Nations.
Oh, okay.
That's an incredible opening song to an incredible album. And man, that guitar tone, Wolf Hoffman, holy moly. I mean, it doesn't get much crunchier than that.
Yes, agreed. 150%. Yeah.
Great tune. Good anthem to see live too. So, all right, number 9, what do you got?
Number 9, and you know, they have a couple of real killer album starters. And you mentioned Beat the Bastards. This is another album starter from the next album, Hung, Drawn, and Quartered.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
That's another
chorus.
Yeah, that's a good one.
First time we saw them, they opened with that tune, and I was just so freaking pumped.
Yep.
It was awesome.
Yeah, that's a great. I agree. That's also a very strong album, I think, and a lot of favorites from that album. So I totally agree. Good choice. My number 9, I'm going to go way back to the Breaker album. I'm going to go with Midnight Highway.
Okay.
Good kind of catchy sing-along anthem with some great, like, almost like, I mean, it's funny how you can say like some of the late 70s, early 80s metal albums or hard rock albums from Germany had that sound, that kind of two-tonic guitar sound. And I think Wolf Hoffman's guitar work on that song, the lead, sound very similar to what you heard from, like, you know, Uli John Roth and the Scorpions, or Michael Schenker, or Matthias Jabs over at the Scorpions. They just had that sound. And I always loved the kind of, that's just such a catchy, memorable song, and one of my favorite early anthems from the band. From a pretty strong album too, Breaker. I always like Breaker a lot. So that's my number 9. What do you got for number 8?
Okay, number 8, and they have, as you mentioned earlier, they have such great crunchy guitar sounds, but sometimes I am very impressed with their lyrics, and that's a couple of my top 10s actually is partially due to the lyrics.
Okay.
Number 8, they pay homage to all of the bands we grew up with. Dying Breed off of Blind Rage.
Yeah.
They mention, and I jotted this down, they mentioned Black Sabbath, Jimi Hendrix, Rainbow, Priest, Saxon, Zeppelin, Purple, Motorhead, and AC/DC. I mean, how cool is that?
That is cool. That's a fun song. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I love it. So I said that had to be in there somewhere. So,
I remember the first time I heard that song, I was like, whoa, but did he just mention that? Oh, he mentioned them. And he mentioned them. Then I was like, very cool. And it's funny because I think that a lot of the older bands are doing that nowadays. Like, I don't know if you've heard the most recent Saxon album, but they also do a song dedicated to Motorhead.
Oh, okay.
Well, they played Rock and Roll. That's the name of the song. And it's all about, you know, Motorhead and their love for Motorhead and their friendship with Motorhead after, of course, now they're all gone, the guys from classic Motorhead lineup. But yes, that's a good choice, Jack. Really good choice.
Buy that album because they played with Priest. So
yep. Yeah, it's a good one. All right, my number 8. I'm going to go back to the Balls to the Wall album for a little London Leather Boys.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
I think, you know, the Balls to the Wall album probably has the best production value stacked up against those more recent ones. I think out of all the early Accept albums, I think that album sounded bigger than life when it came out. And it's not until Blood of the Nations came out that we're like, whoa, it's like Accept is sounding like that again. So
I,
pretty cool. But I always like London Leather Boys. I know some of the lyrics to a lot of the songs on that album are a little bizarre for some people, but I think it's a really catchy and heavy tune. It's got a great chorus, and I remember seeing them play that live back in the day, and that was a lot of fun. So that's my number 8.
okay, very cool. So my number 7 is also off of Balls to the Wall, and it's not London Leather Boys, and it's not the one that everybody's thinking of. It's actually Losers and Winners.
Ah, great song.
Yes.
Great song.
Another concert favorite. Crowd's always getting pumped up. It's not a cliche song like the title track,
Right.
which I played for Samantha in the car the other day. And she's like, "Oh yeah, they're like a German AC/DC."
Yeah, yeah. I think most people say it's kind of like AC/DC meets Judas Priest, and that pretty much exemplifies what Accept are all about. I mean, they got their own style, obviously, but they kind of borrow a bit from both bands and do it quite well, I might add. So that's a great track. That whole album is really good. My number 7, I'm going to go with the title track to Metal Heart.
Oh, okay.
Great song. It's got a cool chorus, and then it's got that blistering guitar solo from Wolf Hoffman, man, which is just amazing. I think he finally announced to the world, it's like, hey, you know what? I'm a guitar hero as well, guys. Don't forget about me. And I just always like Metal Heart. It's another song they play live quite a bit still to this day. So good track.
Way at the end where he starts da 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 da. I don't know what that's called, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah, the whole song is really neat. It's very different, so I dig it. So, all right, number 6, what do you got?
Number 6, okay. I hate to liken the song to what's going on right now, but number 6 for me is off of Blood of the Nations, Pandemic.
Yeah, I had a feeling you were going to say that. Yeah, I was listening to that yesterday and checking out the lyrics to. I'm like, man, how timely is this, huh?
Yeah.
But a great song regardless of when it was released, right? I know back then we weren't having those issues, but well, we kind of parts of the world were of a pandemic of a different nature, right? But yeah, good choice. I'm gonna go number 6. I'm gonna go with an obvious choice for a lot of people who might rank it much higher, but it's a classic song. I love it. And I almost felt like I had to include it here because I've always dug it, and it's Balls to the Wall. Title track. I know it's kind of obvious, but man, there's something about when the band plays that song live, place goes bananas. And you know what? It was a late entry into my list because my original top 10 did not include it. And then I was re-listening to Balls to the Wall, and I'm like, oh man, how can I not include that song? It's like, it's just one of their greatest anthems. It's just, it's so powerful, even though for a lot of us, we probably heard it, a lot, maybe too many times, right?
But I'm actually a little surprised. I know you like to go against the grain sometimes.
I do, but in this instance, I was like, and again, my original list did not include it, and I was like, the more I was like, oh, how can can I really honestly just include it as an honorable mention, even though it's still a song that really resonates with me? I don't know, so I decided to throw it in there. Right. But yeah, you are correct. And a lot of other times I wouldn't have put it up there, but so anyway, that's my number 6. What do you got for number 5?
My number 5 is the title track to Stalingrad.
Great.
Stalingrad. It's I am a bit of a history buff, and this song is very anthemic. You put those two together, and it's great riff, great chorus. Tells a really interesting, good story. Takes place in World War II. I just think it's just the whole thing is really cool. I actually, just to make sure I wanted to put it on my list, I actually looked up the lyrics online just to kind of review them a bit. And yeah, definitely great song.
Yeah, I love it. That's a very strong album too. I remember when that first came out. It's like, because I think for me as a kind of journalist who's reviewing this stuff too. I remember, when Blood of the Nations came out, we were all like, oh my God, this is great. What a return to form. And then it's like, how can they follow that up? And then Stalingrad came out. It's like, well, you know what? Pretty damn good follow up, I think. It's whether you think it's as strong or not, it's up there. And that's a great song. And I love the epic nature of that track too. Very cool.
Yeah.
My number 5, I'm going to go with the title track to my beloved Restless and Wild.
Okay.
again, that album meant a lot to me. And I had to really stop myself from just filling up my entire list with songs from that album because I remember the first time I heard that Restless and Wild album, I was like, this is unlike anything I've ever heard before.
How did
And
you come to hear of Accept?
well, that was what year was that again? Restless and Wild came out in what, 1983 or 82? I don't remember the exact, but you couldn't get that stuff other than as an import. And
Oh,
I remember a friend of mine, because we were all young teenage metalheads, and a friend of mine had gone to the local record shop and picked it up. And of course, the U.S. version of it had the live shot on the front. And I was over his house one day. He goes, "You got to check this out." And he put that album on. It was the LP, and I was like, "Holy cow!" It was heavy, and the Udo screams, and the double bass drum and everything. It's like unlike anything we'd ever heard. And then I went out and bought it like immediately. So, and I was hooked. And I remember like all of us, the group of us, we just listened to that album nonstop for months. Just a great one. And that's a great title track. I love Restless and Wild. It's kind of, not as fast and furious as some of the other songs on the album, but it's got some great guitar riffs and the vocals are outstanding. Just a terrific, terrific song.
okay, that's cool. Well, I'm a little later to the game than you are, so going into my number four, uh, I had never really heard of Accept in the '80s. I mean, I got a lot of word of mouths, from friends growing up with metal. Like a friend of mine introduced me to Iron Maiden, introduced me to Saxon, introduced me to Crocus, bands of that nature, but never Accept. Uh, how I came to heard of Accept was actually Ozzy's Boneyard, XM Radio, Channel 38. They played certain Accept songs, and I was in a record store one day, and on a whim, I bought Blood of the Nations, based on one song that I heard that I liked, and I, as it were, I put the needle down, but on CD, but
Yeah.
and all of a sudden, Beat the Bastards, incredible. So
Yeah.
number 10 is my number four.
Yeah, Beat the Bastards is awesome. I dig it. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with being a late convert to a band. I mean, there's a lot of groups that I listen to that have been around forever that just, I mean, I'll use Alice Cooper as a perfect example. I never listened to Alice Cooper in the 70s or the 80s at all. Even in most of the 90s. I didn't start getting into Alice till like the late 90s, early 2000s. And now I've got everything he's ever done and I, know his albums very well. So, you know what? Even if you're 2 or 3 decades late to the party, it doesn't mean you can't become a fan of the band and totally ingest all their music and just become, just love so much of what they've done. So I think that whether you got into Accept in 2010 or 1982, doesn't really matter. You got there, right?
Yes, yes, and thankfully I've been there for their other three releases during the
Yeah.
Tornillo era.
Yep, exactly. So cool. All right, my number four, I'm going to go back to the Breaker album for the title track, Breaker. That is a great song. That is a
Oh,
legendary Teutonic metal song. I love Breaker. I love the chorus. Love the guitar riff at the beginning. Man, it's just such a cranking song. And again, another song they still play live to this day. So,
okay,
yep.
very cool. Okay, drum roll into our top
The
three.
top three.
I mentioned earlier about their lyrics when we are talking about Dying Breed. This other track is a killer track, but not because it's very heavy, but it's just the message in it, and I absolutely love it. I've been to the tomb. No, what is it, the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier in Arlington National Cemetery a few
Yep.
times. And, what a solemn place. It's you look at all those crosses as you drive through. Uh, Reminds me of the song Shadow Soldiers on Stalingrad.
Hmm.
I went back and I looked at the lyrics for that, and I'm like, holy shit, what similarities to Arlington Cemetery
Yep.
and the story that it tells. And I'm a very patriotic American, and I just think that's a very cool song. Well
It
put.
is. Yep, I agree. It's a good track. The whole album is great. The whole
Yeah.
album is great. All right, my number three. Gonna go to Restless and Wild. Shake Your Heads.
Oh, okay.
Shake your heads. dun, 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 dun. I mean, man, that's a pile driving bang your head song if ever there was one. So man, just for me, trying to choose which tracks from Restless and Wild and Balls to the Wall to put on this list was very tough. And then, but trying to also, look at the rest of their catalog. And I struggle with this so much because I love so many of those newer tracks. But then I had to think, but I've got so much history with those early albums. So that's why the majority of my list is the older stuff.
Right.
But I think that all those more recent albums are so, each album, song to song to song, are really, really good, really strong. They're very consistent. So I'd say, again, I urge anybody who kind of stopped listening to Accept, after like Metal Heart or Russian Roulette, to go and listen to Blood of the Nations and Stalingrad and Blind Rage and all those new ones, man. I'm telling you, really, really good stuff. Really good. Anyway, Jack, back to you, number two.
Number two is off of your favorite album, Restless and Wild. And first time I heard this, I mean, again, I think I heard it on XM radio, and they started with that little German little ditty for children, and then it just like goes into and then that killer riff,
Yeah.
Fast as a Shark. Love that song.
There is nothing like the first time you ever heard Fast as a Shark. I
I,
mean, there's nothing like it, right? Even to this day, yeah. Hi-dee, hi-ho. And then all of a sudden, that scream, and then that guitar riff, and then the double bass drumming. I mean, there's nothing like it in the history of metal. There's nothing like it.
sir, they have the crowd singing that. It's the funniest thing.
Yeah, yeah. That's a classic. That's a good choice. It's a good choice. My number two, going to go to Balls to the Wall. I'm going to go Head Over Heels.
Oh, okay. Another good song.
Yeah, they still play that live, right? And that's another one of those tunes that live everybody's singing along to that. Just a very melodic, memorable song. It's heavy, but it's just so damn catchy, and love the chorus on it. And I always loved Udo's vocals on that entire album. So that's my number two. So all right, here we go. The big moment, number one.
Okay, drum roll. So going back to XM radio, this song actually convinced me to go out and buy Balls to the Wall, Teutonic Terror. I just That is the most killer riff. And we will give him the axe. Oh, freaking amazing.
That's great. That's a fantastic. I did not expect that from you, but that is a fantastic song.
I mean, that is to me that is the perfect metal song.
Yeah.
And then he comes in with that little bass riff in the beginning, just to even better.
Yep. Yep. Good choice. Good choice. Well, my number one was your number two, Fast as a Shark from Restless and Wild.
Okay.
Just weird how the first Accept song I ever heard is my number one Accept song, right? Because sometimes, that shows you how much it made an impact on me way back when, God, almost 40 years ago. Crazy, crazy. So there we have it. So you want to throw out some honorable mentions? Do you have any?
Before I do that, I just wanted to show you a picture. You may have seen this, but I just wanted to show everybody if you can see that. Raise it up.
Here we go.
Yeah, that's
Jack and Udo.
Jack and Udo. Yeah,
I assume that was an Udo solo show.
Yes, that was an Udo solo show, and I just before I lose this on my phone, I also ran into this guy in the crowd. Let me show you. We were talking about Symphony X.
Oh yeah,
Mike Pond. Yeah. But getting back to that show, so that was January 2017, and what Udo did was it was basically a show of all Accept. He did not play any of his solo stuff, and he had a meet and greet. So the price was right. So I'm like, I got to do it. And I actually ran into your friend. I forget his name. I think he owns that record store in
Steve Keeler, yeah, from Rock Fantasy. Yep.
Ran into him online at that show.
He's a huge Udo fan. Steve, if you're watching, I know you've seen so many Udo shows over the year, because Udo plays at the Chance. Well, played at the Chance quite often on his solo tours. And I remember when he did the little Accept tour, he played everywhere, and Steve went to, I think, almost every show.
Right. Okay, so now that I've digressed, what was your last question?
Oh, honorable mentions. You got any honorable mentions?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned to you, there were quite a few that I could have easily added from Blood of the Nations. The Abyss, Locked and Loaded, Bucket Full of Hate. What other honorable mentions? Balls to the Wall, London Leather Boys, which you mentioned, Fight It Back, Love Child.
Yeah, Screaming for a Love Child is fantastic. Yep.
And then off of Breaker, this another song that I was introduced by XM Radio, Son of a Bitch.
Yep.
Yeah, love that song.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Added it, but I wanted to be a little more serious with my choices.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Yeah, I got some that I wish I could have squeezed on. Midnight Mover from Metal Heart is a great song. I know that was kind of like somewhat of a hit for them. I think they still play that live. The title track to Russian Roulette is great. You mentioned The Abyss, which is fantastic. Title track to Blood of the Nations, I love. Flash to Bang from Stalingrad. Great song. Stampede from Blind Rage. Right?
Yes, that is great. That's on my honorable mentions too, yes.
And how about No Regrets from The Rise of Chaos?
Yes, yes. I do have a couple honorable mentions from Rise of Chaos. There's No Regrets, Analog Man, Kool-Aid, What's Done is Done.
Yep. Analog Man is kind of fun. It's kind of, I remember I kind of shit on that a little bit when that album first came out, but then I grew to actually kind of like that song. So, did we mention Love Child from Balls to the Wall or Get Ready from Restless and Wild? A couple other good ones. There's so many great songs. We could sit here all day waxing about the greatness of Accept and all their songs, but cool. Yeah. Cool. Well, there you have it. There's our top 10 songs for Accept. And not a lot of duplication between Jack and I. It just goes to show you how deep their catalog is and how many great songs there are.
I was surprised. We had a lot more duplication when we did the Kiss top 10.
Yeah, that I was not surprised at. Yeah.
And I have to say, I found this one much more difficult because now with Kiss, I mean, it's just really the four members that we remember and that are our favorite era and song. So whereas Except you have to pay homage to two great lead singers, and you have two almost different catalogs within one. Yep. And I wanted to be fair to both catalogs, but as you see, 7 out of 10 were from the Tornillo era for me.
Yep. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. So cool. Hope everybody enjoyed this journey into the Accept songbook, right? So curious to see what everybody chooses as their favorite Accept song. So if you guys want to drop a top 5 or a top 10 into the comments and feedback below, please do. Remember, we all hear these songs differently, so everybody's going to come up with different favorites. There's no right or wrong answer. So Jack, once again, thanks for joining us. We'll be seeing Jack again probably within the next week. He and I are going to be working on top 10 song shows for Iced Earth and Symphony X. For all you metalheads in the crowd, stay tuned for those. What's coming up later today? So we've got Motorhead, ranking the studio albums. I'll be pumping that out today. We've got ranking the studio albums of the great progressive rock band Caravan. And then my brother is joining the show this afternoon, and we are going to rank the studio albums of Dream Theater and Symphony X. So you don't want to miss any of that. So lots of content coming up. And make sure you also check out the debut of The Monster's Den, where I talk about and review the original Dracula from 1931. So don't miss that either, all right? So this is on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on the YouTube all the damn time. Say it, Jack. All the damn time.
All the damn time.
There you go. So for Jack, we'll see him in about a week. Say goodbye, Jack. And for everybody else, have a good rest of the weekend.
Pete, thank you once again for doing this. This is always a lot of fun. Wish I could do it more, but we'll take it as it comes. And just, you know what? Keep up the great work, Pete.
I appreciate it.
Everybody enjoys what you do. So
thanks, Jack. I appreciate it. That means a lot. So we'll see Jack soon, and everybody else, we'll see you later on. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.